What's going on? Welcome back to Off the Schneid. Big show tonight. Just got off the FanSpeak network. Hopefully you caught the episode over there. I won't give it away. It was a tight finish. It was a good time. It was really fun. Appreciate those guys over there. So head over to FanSpeak. Watch back the episode if you haven't watched it, and leave a like there, leave a comment after the fact. But we got a big brain episode tonight. We're going to be going through, obviously, the NFL schedule drop today, so we're going to be chatting through that with a couple gents that are smarter than me. So let's bring them in. We got Mr. Billy Jones, and we've got Steve Shop. It's Shop, right? How I say your last name?
It's Shaup, like Shaup, okay. But replace the T with the P.
Gotcha. How you doing, Steve? Appreciate you guys having me on your channel over there. And how we doing tonight? How you feeling?
Yeah, doing good. That was a fun watch. As is kind of looking through some schedule stuff, I was watching that, and definitely fun. We're going to keep releasing stuff like that, and thanks for having me on. Always good to talk ball, and especially today with the schedule release.
Yeah, Billy, how are you? Appreciate you coming on, man. Always fun to have you on. What's going on tonight? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm excited to be on. It's with the schedule release. This is a whole nother set of data now that we have to work with. I was able to get one chart together. Always got to bring a chart that's kind of who I am. You can see it literally in my name, in my Twitter handle. But I will get everything all together now by weeks 15, 16, 17. Everything all kind of can be compiled together now. So we kind of start to have the whole recipe.
Yeah, there's not a crazy amount more information. The only like information that's going to come out is a lot of like some negative stuff for sure. Obviously, if there's suspensions, injuries, stuff like that, and then that will move ADPs, and obviously ADPs are going to shift as we go throughout the summer. But really, we should have all the like raw data that we need or that you need to kind of get started on building charts and stuff like that. So let's get into it. I wanted to pull up a couple quick charts that I think have some merit just off the hop. This one, the miles traveled total for teams. I think that this is worth talking about if we're talking about game stacking, team stacking, things like that. If teams are constantly on an airplane, on a bus, moving around, it takes away from other things that these teams could be doing, meetings, on the field, practice, taking care of their bodies, stuff like that. So I think that this is an important kind of thing to factor in when we're talking about these teams. But Billy, what's your thoughts on the miles traveled? Does it weigh in at all for you?
I haven't ever historically considered it. I'm really curious about these numbers. So is this inclusive of like international travel?
Yeah, because the Chargers are going to Brazil. I think Jacksonville certainly is going to London. I'm sure of that. Who's staying over there for 2 weeks? The Vikings are staying over there. So they're having the benefit of not going back and forth. They're just staying in Europe. They're doing Dublin and then London. So yeah, it does include the international games.
I think it does stand out like the easy schedules more than I think that they're probably gotten pretty good at managing workload. But if like Cincinnati, look, that number is so low. They get to sleep at home pretty much every week.
Right? Yeah, you're pretty much, that's a big thing. It's not super difficult to go east to west, but going west to east is extremely difficult. As someone that lives on the West Coast, when I go to the east, it's terrible. I lose 2 hours. I got to get up earlier. It's not great. And we see that sometimes, in the NFL where it disrupts your schedule. It's a lot easier to go from the East Coast to the West Coast than vice versa. So that's something that obviously these West Coast teams, the Chargers, the Rams, the Seahawks, the 49ers, obviously are all at the top of the list here. And that's just because they've got to go back and forth across the country. Steve, do you weigh in on this? Like, what are your thoughts on the miles traveled thing?
Yeah, I definitely think it is something to consider. And I think you also have to look obviously a lot of times when teams come back from Europe, they get a bye after, like Washington Dolphins have the week 11 game in Madrid, they have the bye week 12. But it does kind of factor in, especially when they're doing maybe these sometimes teams do get screwed and have shorter spans. Like the Steelers, their playoff schedule, they played the Ravens, Eagles, and Chiefs in like a 14-day period last year. That was pretty nuts. and I think we had 2 of those on the road. I mean, one, it's not like they was that far, but it's a lot. And sometimes these teams do get a little screwed with truncated schedules, and that is something to keep in mind, especially when you're looking at like playoff matchups and things of that nature.
Yeah, I know the Chiefs last year, I believe it was all 3 of their playoff games. They had 3 games in 10 days last year, which is
they and the Steelers were very similar. Yeah, it was like one was 11, one was 10 days, something like that. But yeah, that was nuts.
So that's obviously pretty difficult in itself. But again, if you're on the road constantly, like Billy said, the Bengals are basically sleeping in their own beds most nights. Even if they're on the road, it's sometimes a bus trip. Like literally, it's not the end of the world. So something that I'm happy as a Bengals fan, obviously, that looks good to me. So just something I wanted to kind of bring up and touch on, not necessarily like the be all end all of information, but I do think it's worth kind of having a quick chat about. Billy, do you want to share one of your charts, or do you want to go with the points scored allowed that I have over here?
Yeah, sure. I can show my chart. Let's put my screen up on the. How do I do this? I am sharing. Do you need to put me up?
Oh, there we go. Let's do that. Yeah. Yep.
And let's see if I can make this bigger. Is that? That's probably about as big as I can make it. But what this is posted on my Twitter, and what I think is interesting is this is each week 17 game stack, where you have like each team colored and the quarterbacks are in bold. I have a version of this that's just for the game stacks, the full game, like as well as just the passing stacks. And I think this is really interesting in terms like planning out like your builds, as well as looking at where some players are going to like be trending. One of the ones that stands out right off the top is the Bengals. They're playing the Cardinals, and it's just like they're automatically a fun team to build. I mean, Jamar Chase, Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison, T. Higgins are all going to be right at that 1-2, the 2-3 turn, with Jamar Chase at the 101. So that team's going to be super common. And I think that you're also going to see like James Conner, who sits on like the opposite side of the board, going to get moved up to that side of the board because of that stacking gravity as well. So I think this just kind of helps like visually show out the board. Yeah, maybe I can zoom in.
What I liked about this too, and I got a quick look at it. You posted it, and I posted this in the comments there, guys. So if you're in the chat, you want to follow along, just pop open the tweet from Billy right there, and you can kind of follow along, get a better view at it. But yeah, no, I agree with that. And the wild thing wasn't just a side note on the Bengals Cardinals conversation is, in the big board, I wasn't doing a crazy amount of that because it's not typical that it's going to be an NFC AFC team playing each other in week 17. So that's going to be relatively unique in the big board and very common, like you just said. And then now that the schedule's out, it's going to be exceptionally common in Best Ball Mania season. So, and then the other thing that kind of stuck out to me was just like overall price, because I think that's what's a great visual of this chart here. Looking at the 49ers and the Bears game, like that's an expensive game stack right there. You really have to be intentional if you want to go down that road and put that game stack together. You're going to have to pull guys up if you want to make sure to get the strong pieces of that stack. So I definitely love the visualization of this. It shows you basically in a nutshell, in a snapshot, how expensive the game stack is going to be. Steve, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. And look, I mean, like some of these like 49ers Bears, if the Bears are what we think we are, that's the one we definitely want to be targeting. Same with, potentially Arizona. Their offense can be a little hit or miss, but those are two very interesting ones. Obviously, I'm a Commanders fan. That Dallas Commanders stack is now kind of lines up kind of perfectly. Like you can really hammer that if you wanted to. I'm not saying it's the best call because right now neither team has a great running game, and so maybe if you're just hitting all the passing weapons, but you do need to look at like where you're getting these guys. The Raiders Giants, like 3 guys in the top 15 picks, but then it's like a huge gap. And same kind of thing with Chargers and Houston. You have that Nico Ladd right away, then a big gap.
Yeah, and
that's a good call. That I wanted to highlight too. That Nico Ladd is going to be chalk. That is going to make way too much sense. Like your first two picks can be aligned for week 17, and they're receivers. Like I'm interested.
Yeah, the correct way to do that might be take Nico Ladd and then get rid of that game stack, shift to a different game stack with your quarterback might be the kind of correct or EV way to play that that first round, second round start. And kind of like Billy was alluding to earlier, like that's going to push Ladd up a little bit to, like you said, align with wherever Nico's ADP. So that's probably going to be a 1-2 turn type of a thing, or something that you can kind of pull up a little bit, like take Nico at ADP of 12 and then pull up Ladd from ADP of 16 or something like that, or 17, pull him up to the 1-2 turn and then kind of take it from there. But yeah, looking at the passing stacks, like look at that Bears Niners game. It's by far the most expensive game stack like that. I just got a quick look before I got on the FanSpeak show there at this chart, and I was like, holy shit, the Bears Niners is going to be like, you absolutely have to intentionally put that together. And it should be a relatively okay weather game being in San Francisco. So it should be lucrative. It should be a good game stack. And the Niners defense isn't fantastic. So that could be an interesting one, but any other takeaways?
One thing I wanted to point out, just what we were all just talking about, the Nico Ladd, like hit that and then go away. The guy who won BBM 2 years ago, BBM 4, he drafted his first two picks were Lamb and Amon-Ra, and he wanted a Dak stack. He wanted a Goff stack, but he apparently got sniped on both. He ended up with Jordan Love, and he had Christian Watson, who didn't do anything but Jaden Reed, and he won $3 million that year, so it just shows like this might be the right receivers, whether it's Puka Drake, Malik Bauer or something like that, like your 1-2, but then, you might not, whether you intentionally don't get it or it just doesn't work out that way. I'm saying all hope's not lost, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to with the whole Nico Collins Ladd thing. Like Billy was saying, like that is going to be heavy chalk on that game stack. So you gotta find a way to get unique outside of that. In another direction. The other thing that we don't have on here, but some of the like going off of what ADPs that we know, like looking at the Miami Tampa Bay game with Achane and Bucky, that's going to be another stack that's most likely super chalk. You have it there. There you go. So Bucky, Achane, right? Like that's going to be super chalk as well, and a direction you can go and then get unique in other ways.
Yeah, and you got Tyreek Hill sitting right there in like the same-ish range. And while everyone kind of agrees that Tyreek Hill is a somewhat of inspiring like play right now, it's like, tell me it's like Tyreek Hill's good leverage. Okay, fine, I can make that argument. He still runs fast. So I think it's an interesting way to build that. I mean, with each one of these, there's going to be interesting ways to build it. And I think that's what this chart really helps you visualize.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was going to say, I think another one, like, a lot of people start two receivers, but as we saw last year, running backs were very, very strong start. And I think like the Brian Thomas, Jonathan Taylor pairing could be because it's also what those teams want to do. If Liam Cohen's bringing in his Bucks passing attack that had 40 touchdowns last year, that, benefits Brian Thomas. And we know Jonathan Taylor is the absolute focal point of that Colts offense. So, that could be a way where you're getting the stack. It's not, a lot of these are going to try and fight for those receiver tight end, like the Brock and, Neighbors type thing. But I think that could be an interesting way to start off your team strong and, kind of have your elite receiver and elite running back already set in a week 17 stack.
Yeah, I think it's, and again, something Billy was alluding to earlier there is like, there's a lot of already like built-in chalk here, like Genty Bowers, Ladd, Nico, BTJ, and Jonathan Taylor. The Bijan Puka? No, that won't work. Puka Drake, probably, right? Like there's a lot of
the start you're gonna see screenshotted a million times. Puka, Drake London, Devontae Adams, or Kyron Williams. Like, or if you can get all four of them, that's gonna be the dream like screenshot.
Yeah. There's just so much. There's just so much like auto built-in chalk already that I can just by looking at this. There's just so much built-in chalk already. Kind of, it's going to be interesting how you kind of leverage that and get unique. And I think that was a good example, the Bucky Tyreek, because you're getting, and like Steve was saying, like you get that running back, that high end running back with, and again, the passing defense for the Bucs is probably not even probably, it is their weakness as far as their defense is concerned. So Tyreek might be the better target anyways, but then do you leverage further and go like Bucky Waddle, Bucky Jonnu, stuff like that. Like that's what's going to get really interesting because there's so much built-in chalk.
Yeah, I'm like kind of processing this live because I posted it not that long ago. Like Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs is interesting. It's also they do not align. They're about a round apart. So if you want to draft them both together and just say that that's a running game, then you have to like do something really like weird and have them do on the 1-2 turn, which I will see people doing. I don't know about it, but I could see people doing. That one's an interesting one.
The other thing would be like dome games. So obviously like the most kind of lucrative or like, focused games are going to be those warm weather dome games, obviously. So we've got Vikings, Falcons, Raiders, Chargers, Colts, Niners should be fine. Who is that? Ravens, Packers. Yikes. Panthers should be fine. Broncos, Chiefs could be quite cold there. There's obviously going to be those built-in, warm weather games that'll get really interesting. And
that Lions Vikings game is probably the most top expensive, like from a top end perspective. You see 3 guys going in the first round. There's no way to really kind of build the premium version of that game.
Yeah, but like I was going to say earlier, I forgot, but you just alluded to it again, is like a lot of these players are going to get sucked up like a half round, 8 picks, stuff like that, or even sometimes pushed around a little bit. Like Burrow might get pushed down, maybe not. He has been, and maybe he will, maybe he won't. But a guy like Jameson Williams probably sees a bump with this game, and then trying to get that bring back on the Justin Jefferson side, or even with just a Amon-Ra, and then you figure it out later on the Viking side. But that's we're definitely going to see that. So, there is a benefit to drafting early, like right now, as quick as you kind of can before these ADPs shift those, 6 to 8 picks that we are absolutely going to see.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And it also to help get some more unique combos. The other thing I'd say is a couple of things stand out, like a couple of teams with maybe some late stacks. This might not be your primary stack, but this is your number 2 or number 3 quarterback. Like look at Seattle, Carolina. Their quarterbacks go late. A lot of their receivers go late. You hit 1 or 2 pieces early, get a quarterback or 2 late, and then, like Adam Thielen or something like that, or MVS who's not shown, or Elijah Arroyo, in the 18th round. And it could be a fun way. I mean, both those defenses aren't exactly the biggest threat, and as you said, that should be a good weather game. So that's one that kind of sticks out to me interestingly enough. that probably overlooked, but maybe two ascending offenses given all the additions they've made, in the offseason.
Yeah, and kind of like we were saying earlier, that can be your leverage when you're let's say Nico, Ladd, whatever, Genty, Bowers, like that can be your leverage away from those games where you have the premium, especially like a Genty or not Genty Bowers, sorry, Nico Ladd, let's call it. Like you have a Nico Ladd, the two dominant pieces of those offenses, their respective offenses, should be the highest scorers on a weekly basis and certainly for season long. And then you leverage away from that, not bringing in the quarterbacks, not bringing in the second piece, because again, it's going to be super, super, super chalk. So that could be a nice way to kind of leverage away from, and even the Bucks Dolphins, like get two of those quality high end pieces and then leverage away from it. Even the Vikings Lions and then leverage away from it. Stuff like that, I think could be quite lucrative.
Yeah. One thing I do wonder, just looking at this, because I think the matchup's really strong, and like, Billy was just saying, it's going to be a really popular early stack. The Falcons Rams, in a dome, the secondaries, especially in those defenses, aren't exactly scary. And Penix and Stafford go so late, so you can easily stack with your guys. So I wonder if it pulls Penix up some. I wonder if it pulls Stafford up some. But just a lower tier stack that can pay off. I mean, we've seen that before. Again, the 2 years ago when that team that I mentioned won, Jordan Love was not QB1 on the week. That was Lamar. But Lamar was expensive and Love was cheap. So sometimes that's what what hits and pays off is value.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need QB1, but pretty much every time you need wide receiver one, you need running back one. Like
that's
every
what
single
I'm saying. Like if it's like Bijan Devontae is the start or something, and you have Stafford or
Yeah. Yeah, the quarterback, as we know, is more essential to advancing, but it's not essential in a 1 week vacuum. Realistically, you have to have the running back one and or at the very least but usually it's and the wide receiver one. Like you have to have both of those pieces, and then you just can't be at the bottom of the barrel at those, especially the onesies, quarterback, tight end. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of way of leveraging away from those games while getting the quality pieces from some of these isolated games that should be pretty high scoring. The other side of that coin is what happens to like the Packers and the Ravens. Like, is this going to push Derrick Henry to the end of round 2? I don't know. Like that's going to be interesting, is if it's going to push him down playing a cold weather game, in the Packers. It should lean on the running game, which again, Billy was kind of alluding to it earlier, that if it does, then that absolutely blows the door wide open for a Jacobs Henry start. Right. So that'll be the other side of that coin, where it's interesting who falls, because of, negative, I guess, theory game script.
Well, I mean, it is interesting. Like, some of the best offenses, Bills, Bengals, Eagles, Packers, Ravens, all have these probably cold weather games we're hoping to avoid. That's kind of where they're at. I mean, Steelers, Browns, that wasn't a big one, but and Broncos, Chiefs, that's another top 10 potential offenses. So there are some really good offenses definitely going to be exposed to the cold. Will it affect all of them? No, but some of them. So yeah, that's just it'll be interesting.
And also, I think one angle that we can always I want to do more of this year is like manipulating ADP, but like in the middle rounds. Let the top is going to be better. We want to pick the best players. We don't want to move people full round up the boards. But if there's that Bears 49ers game, because it's so cluttered, maybe if I move someone like between Rome, Pearsall, Ayuk, Burden, like you see all of these, you can't reasonably pick them all at ADP and get a chunk of them. So I'll let that be like how I play that, but I have to move one of them up, like from like the 6th round to the 5th round. I think that kind of move is a lot less done. It's a lot more fun to do like the premium version of it, but it's still great leverage to what the field is actually going to build.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Like, you have to be extremely intentional with a build, especially that game, like that Niners Bears game. You're going to have to be very intentional if you want to go down that road, because like you said, you have to pull at least one up and potentially get one that falls. So looking at that whole kind of even on the left side of the chart, the ADP 50-100, you draw 2 lines, one at 50, one at 100, and you look at all of those names. Any one of those guys you can pull up around, and especially when we're talking like the Jameson Williams, potentially Darnell Mooney, maybe Brian Robinson, probably not, but those 49ers Bears, Emeka Ibuka maybe rises, right? Like stuff like that. That's the range, I think, like you were just saying, that's the range that you're going to have to, at least in the midterm, until the ADPs kind of level out to where they're going to go. It's just a matter of trying to get ahead of the game. And that's why I said, if you're drafting right now, it's probably the best time to take advantage of that before they settle to where they're going to land. So.
Yeah, no. And just to reiterate it, like, those were 49ers and Bears were 2 of the hardest teams to stack as it was, because they had so many weapons go ahead of their quarterback that you couldn't say, oh, I can push Caleb, I can push Brock. And now I think it's going to be even more so.
Yeah, those are the quarterbacks. I think that's exactly what you're alluding to, is they're going to have to rise, because you can't push them, because your whole structure, your whole roster construction, is based around getting that quarterback. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see where those ADPs kind of go or land. So a guy like Justin Fields might fall a little bit, just because of
maybe.
Yeah, literally just because of those other pieces in the offense where you can't afford to push the quarterback. So no, that's really interesting. I'll tag it again in the chat. This is you can go follow, and both of these gentlemen, their Twitter links are in the description down there. So go follow both of these guys on there. This is the link to these charts from Mr. Billy Jones there on his Twitter. So hit those, take a look. I would recommend getting relatively familiarized with these again before these ADPs shift a little bit. It'd be interesting to see what this looks like, halfway through the summer or something like that.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Will be really interesting to see where things go. So, and then kind of in that, I kind of want to have both pulled up right now, but I'm going to pull up these couple charts. Let's go with this one first. So this was from, I think Ian Harditz posted this on Twitter. So I just ripped it off there. Go follow Ian Harditz. He's a good follow. I'm sure most people are anyways, but this is just your average points per game for the last 4 seasons. So 2024, obviously the Buffalo Bills were the 2nd highest scoring offense in the NFL. The Detroit Lions were number 1. And then your averages, because, there will be some shifts, obviously. Look at, I'm sure, Washington, wherever they are. Yeah. 20, 25, 23, 24, 25, and then 5th overall last year. So we can obviously see why, and we know that upward trajectory. But so these would essentially, what I would like to do is use this type of a chart, the chart that Billy just posted, and the schedule, and then use that to kind of build out the games that I'd like to focus on, like the Rams you mentioned earlier, Steve. Points per game scoring, they're 20. The Falcons, where are they? 13. But I think we can both agree they're probably 2 teams that are on the upper trajectory. And then I'll show a chart in a second here of where the defenses are going. But yeah, anything that sticks out on here to anybody?
I think the first thing that sticks out, and you can make this case about a couple teams, but Dallas, falls to 21 last year. People will blame McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer, but really it's Dak. Dak got injured and a few other things, but team went bad, and that's why they were 17th in 2020 because he missed a good portion of that season as well. So you look when Dak's been healthy, and he even missed 5 games in 2022, and they finished third. So it just shows like that team. Yes, there's some other different pieces around, but Dak and CD I think could still be pretty legit still. Dolphins are a similar thing. When Tua's hurt, they're bad. When he's not, they finished second last year. So, I think that's what you're betting on with Tyreek, and that's what you're betting on with Waddle and Achane is Tua staying healthy. You look at the splits between when those guys 2 games played and not when he didn't play, and they're night and day. So, Detroit obviously losing not just a coordinator, but a lot of their offense coaches will be interesting, but everyone else on that team comes back. So I feel still good. They're probably top 5 team, maybe not number 1. So yeah, I think we do need to take all the context matters so much in these kind of charts.
Yeah, I think on the other side of that too, like kind of you were saying, like Minnesota, now they go to a rookie quarterback. Do they fall back to where their median might be closer to 22 than, offense number 9, offense number 7? Do they fall down? That sort of a thing. And then even the Buccaneers, same thing. I mean, this is true for all teams and all offenses. If they lose their quarterback, they're probably not going to perform as well as they could. But I was listening to Moving the Chains today in the truck on the radio, and they were talking about the backup quarterback situation behind Baker Mayfield, and it's not good. So it'll be really interesting. Like if something happens to Baker, that team just completely implodes on itself. So we'll see what happens there. But Billy, do you have any takes on the points per game averages?
I like the Dallas call as like a very clear outlier to come back. And there's a comment in the chat about like who you think's a player that's going to go up. I think that Cowboys Commanders game is going to rise just in total. I mean, you think about it, one side of the off situation, the Cowboys, they're going to a bounce back situation. And then the other side is just like super awesome, like potential MVP, like as a rookie quarterback. So like, I just feel like that there's like, that's a fun team to click in a situation to be involved in. So I could see that having pieces of that just like in total move up. Yeah. So that's what
do we think Terry McLaurin becomes a 2nd round pick is kind of what you're alluding to, and I think that's very on the table.
I think
for sure, and then
with Lamb,
like to line up with Lamb,
for sure. And then like the secondary picks, so like you start like a CD Lamb and or Terry McLaurin, like Pickens and or Debo, like you want those guys. They both are a little bit later, so you're going to want to prioritize like double stacking some way. So I think that there's just like a lot of ways that are like name brand too that you're going to see like at multiple points in the draft. Like early.
I think that's a quality call out. I wanted to pull this one back up that those pieces are probably, where's that game right there? Those pieces are definitely going to rise. Like Terry becomes this is a prime example. Terry probably becomes a 2nd round pick. Jaden Daniels probably becomes a 3rd round pick. And then Pickens slides up to, where he might not move a crazy amount because he's already in that range, but actually maybe he moves into a 4th round pick where he's a 5th round pick right now. So yeah, this whole game might literally everybody shift up the board around more or less.
Well, and the other thing with it, and I said it earlier, I mean, right now, currently neither team, we're really excited about the running game. So, Eckler might be a value pick, but Jaden Blue or Javonte isn't exactly exciting. Brian Robinson Jr., he was losing snaps to Jeremy McNichols last year, so not exactly exciting. So, yeah, you want to hammer this passing game, and you can go late with the tight ends, Ferg and Ertz, but it's not like there's other receivers after those, 4 guys.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up in that conversation. This is points allowed last year, right? So I'm sure it looks a little bit worse, but Dallas, the 2nd worst on defense last year, 31st in the league last year for points allowed. So yeah, that's already going to inflate that a little bit. Washington, middle of the pack, 18th. I think they did a little bit on defense, but they should still be gettable, especially for a high powered offense like the Dallas Cowboys. So yeah, right there is another kind of built in, I guess just reason for everybody to inflate price wise. So yeah, and then looking at the San Francisco side, we talked about the San Francisco Bears matchup. One of the worst teams on defense. They definitely did address it, but not necessarily on the secondary for the San Francisco 49ers. So, third worst in the NFL last year in points allowed. That is, and it's in a pretty good weather-wise, location. So that should be another one. Again, we're already probably prioritizing, but yeah, that's an interesting one. In Carolina, I like the call out that I was saving this for the Carolina call out against Seattle, literally the worst team on defense last year. And they didn't get a screaming amount better at all either on defense. So yeah, that could really be a nice, mind you, it is going very extreme west to very extreme east for the Seattle Seahawks. So that might not be, I don't know, that's another conversation in itself, but yeah, do we see any outliers on the points against?
Well, not necessarily. Oh, I'll go ahead, Billy.
I was thinking, so Denver really improved their defense last year. I mean, at first when you look at this chart, it's the opposite of the last one. So you got to reorient where is the last year.
Yeah, I know. It's really annoying. It's really annoying.
But they were really good last year. So when the schedule first came out, I was like, Broncos, Chief. I like that. That sounds fun. Patrick Mahomes, Bo Nix, that sounds like guys I've been interested in, especially Mahomes is cheap as we've seen him. Bo Nix is also a second-year quarterback that's got, we've already seen the upside. But they made, their secondary is going to be awesome. They got better in the draft this year. That's not something I want to attack from the Chiefs side. And then, the Chiefs have been spectacular on defense too. So, that's something that was a matchup that really, gave me pause after considering what exactly it is.
Yes, absolutely. And considering it's in cold weather, Kansas City, and again, we've kind of been ping-ponging with risers and fallers. I think we're going to have to see these Broncos and these Chiefs, sorry about it, RJ Harvey, you're finally going to fall down to the board, hopefully to a draftable, ADP. But yeah, we're gonna see, I think, that game stack fall down a little bit because I don't want much to do with the Chiefs. And then the other thing I'm glad we brought up the Chiefs, because I've been saying for a little while, there we go. So this is the opposite side now again, Billy. It's really annoying, but looking at the Chiefs, the past 2 years, they're middle of the pack. They're 15 and 15, middle of the pack in offense. So in the environment that we just already kind of laid out, is that something that we want to be attacking? I've been saying for weeks now, I know BBG is a big Chiefs guy. He probably gets that from Davis Maddock a little bit maybe, but at some point, I think we have to agree that it's a duck. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's a duck at some point, and we have to just admit that the Chiefs are a duck.
Yeah, I mean, they're a team that they're still, to me, my problem with them is they're being drafted too high. They're being drafted like it's 2022.
Exactly.
And now I still think there's upside there because, from what we see from Rice being back, and, they potentially could be by far the healthiest they've been since 2022. But I do agree, we shouldn't be drafting two of their receivers in top 40 picks now, 43, whatever it is. And then, Mahomes being taken ahead of guys like Baker, who dusted him last year, guys like Fields or, whoever else you want. I love Caleb because of the bounce back potential for the Bears, or the upside with the Bears with Ben Johnson. I think Mahomes is obviously still a winner, but it's they're going to win any way they can. And with that defense, if it stays that elite, Like they're fine winning those 3-point games because they also trust Mahomes to get that field goal drive at the end. Other teams don't trust their quarterback to do that. Chiefs trust Mahomes. Yeah, we'll win 20-17, but that does not help us in fantasy.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm on another screen. Billy, you have something to say by chance?
No, I'm just trying to think about like which were the worst defenses last year. So that's like going to be a narrative that Broncos Chiefs is going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah.
Or the best defenses, I guess is the way to put it. So like the ones that were hardest to score against.
Yeah, I wanted to bring these two things up. Like, have we not made a compelling enough argument? Like Rashee Rice, I think this game script, they just added one of the better, especially like man coverage corners in the draft this year. Maybe the best corner in the draft this year in the first round. And it's a cold weather game, and the other guy on the other side of the field is probably the best corner in the entire NFL. I don't think Rashee Rice is such a great pick, if I'm being perfectly honest. And then, like, on the other side of it, again, have we not made a compelling enough argument that I think that Rome Odunze would be a very good pick? I mean, are you trying to be just contrarian to be contrarian? I'm not sure, but yeah, I think that this change, everything is just kind of changed, in my opinion. Like Billy said earlier, like now we have like some very necessary data that we need to draft properly, right? And I think we need to adjust, is what I will say to the chat. It's everything is potentially different. Everything is different for teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Bills, Eagles, where's the other one? The Ravens, Packers. Like everything kind of changes for those teams. And so that's just kind of what I want to caution everybody, is like we need to reset a little bit some of our priors due to some of these potential game scripts. And again, I think the Chiefs Broncos is the poster child for that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the one where not only the cold weather, but like you said, these two elite defenses, that could really, really be a low scoring affair. But I will say the one interesting thing is the division could very well come down to this game. I think Denver is going to make a big jump this year. Chargers are in the mix as well, but I think
I was gonna say that could borderline be a playoff game, more or less. You know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say that as well. I think the Broncos have a very good chance to win this division. So I think that's another thing that we all know in playoff games. It does not matter. Like you said, they'll win 21-20. Who cares? They'll win 17-14. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is being 1-0 that week. That's the only thing that matters in these types of, game environments. So yeah, I think we need to, I just wanted to caution everybody. I think you need to change your priors just a little bit based on some of these games. And again, it's not the be all end all. I'm sure, maybe a wide receiver in that game just goes nuts. But again, if we're using all the data that we have, you got to change some things a little bit. So,
are you guys week 16 drafters as well, or are you mostly focused on week 17?
I like focusing on a little bit on all three. Sure, you can't necessarily stack, but I like going for teams that have a good playoff schedule, both from a weather standpoint. Like the Lions last year, they were out in San Francisco for week 17, but they were in domes week 15, 16, I believe. So, or maybe they were in Chicago one of those weeks, but still, they had 2 of the 3 games that looked pretty good on paper. So it's stuff like that I focus on, and defensive matchup. Like I'm not necessarily trying to stack all 3 games, but I am trying to get good combination matchups, good combination of good weather. And now, I think as we saw last year, Chiefs and Steelers, both we talked about earlier, like having to play those 3 games in like 10, 11 days was insane. So if, there's I know there's the short week again this year, a little bit with Christmas, I think, but just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I like to do, if anything, like pieces of weeks. So if it's a tiebreaker between two running backs or something like that, if there's a matchup in week 16 or week 15, something like that, I'll typically take that player because you want positive game scripts in those weeks where it matters as well. So that's kind of how I attack it. Another cool way to do it, like last year, I think it was Detroit, Green Bay, maybe there was another team in there, one other team where there's three teams and they play each other 15 and 17 or 16 and 17, something like that. So I like to find those and then kind of focus on that and have a bring back from each game. If it's a positive game environment from my week 17 stack, and then I'll bring backs from weeks 15, 16, et cetera. So, yeah, but those are tough to find. And I think there is a couple this year, but, do we have any, final thoughts on these guys?
Just real quick on the defensive matchups. One point I want to make, a very interesting one is Bengals and Cardinals. Neither defense is potentially that good, though the Cardinals heavily addressed it in the draft this year and a bit in the offseason. So maybe their defense changes, but that could be a more fun, high scoring game.
Yeah, where is
Cardinals are 15 and I think
at Bengals? It'd be better if that was at Cardinals, that's for sure.
Yeah,
that would be a hell of a lot better. But I mean, it should be fine. And yeah, looking at the chart, obviously, I know my team. Yeah, we're going to struggle probably just as much unless Al Golden comes in and makes all the difference in the world defensively, which is possible. It's not out of the question. Then the Cardinals are kind of middle of the pack, but what does that middle of the pack look like against an offense like the Bengals, right? So that's another thing you need to factor in as well is, talking about the like the Cowboys and the Commanders game. Like the Commanders are middle of the pack defense, but against an offense like the Cowboys, if Dak's on the field, that becomes, what do they become when they're facing that kind of offensive power?
Well, perfect example was the Bengals against Denver last year. Denver, one of the top defenses, and Burrow, Higgins, Gesicki, and Chase just shredded them.
Yeah, exactly. So let's pop open the actual schedule. We're not going to go through every week here, but I did want to touch on a couple little things on week one that kind of stood out to me. Number one, just a fun game. I don't know if anybody heard this, but allegedly Aaron Rodgers just became a member at one of the more prestigious golf clubs in Pittsburgh just recently. That's pretty telling to me as a big golfer. Like, that's pretty telling to me that he's probably going to be a Steeler. So then we've got obviously Aaron Rodgers with the Steelers, and then Justin Fields with the Jets playing against each other. Former team against former team, quarterback against their former team. That's a pretty fun matchup for the schedule makers to do. So just kind of wanted to point that one out. But then the other one that's just a little more interesting as far as a football perspective, typically in years past, you don't see a lot of in-division games in week one. Usually they kind of push. Obviously, that's why when we don't know the schedule, we stack divisions, at least conferences, things like that. But there's a lot of in-division games, Vikings, Bears, Packers, Lions, right? Giants, Commanders. There's a lot of inside division games, Chiefs, Chargers, Cowboys, Eagles, Bengals, Browns, Bucks, Falcons, right? There's a lot this year that those games mean a lot to these teams, these division games. I just thought that was interesting that we don't typically see that. And then this year they kind of threw it all together in week one. So it's intriguing, but yeah, just a little bit different.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, and it's another show to break down, but for like contests like Eliminator, weeks 1, 2, and 3, those are where you should be, you should treat that as weeks 15, 16, 17, because you want to get to the money and you want as many teams live as possible, as far as possible, if you're going to be, profitable in that and get that one, that kind of like that one lucky team through. So early schedule is very important for that. And, definitely like some matchups and also, maybe avoid rookies and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. ADPs will be a hell of a lot different in the eliminator than a lot of these other tournaments. Even a team like the Giants, Twitter's been a buzz with the gauntlet that they're going to have to go through early in the season. So, do you really want Malik Neighbors on your eliminator teams? I don't know. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but that might be something worth thinking about, right?
Yeah.
Like you kind of mentioned there, Steve. But let's jump over to week 15. Let's start there. That's obviously the first playoff week.
Before we do that, there is one week I want to highlight. Let's go to week 8.
Oh yeah, wait. Let's actually remind me first. Because I think I know where you're getting at. Let's go through the bye weeks. Is that where you're getting at?
Exactly.
So
week 8.
Let's go with the first week 5 here. Week 5, first week of buys. Anything here shouldn't be too much of an issue. Really, we want to go through bye Mageddon, right?
Yeah, there's 4 teams here, so there's a little bit of noise that you have to work around. Like, it is early in the season, so that is, I guess, feels nice. One thing is you have to be conscious with this, like week 5, 6, 7 buys, is that a rookie quarterback may not have been given the keys yet. So if you're putting him as your quarterback 2, or I'm really kind of looking at you, Jackson Dart. And being like, if you're tapping it, going elite quarterback, and then bringing him late as your second quarterback, you probably not going to want to do it with like the Bills, for example. Bills Ravens week 7, Jackson Dart may not be in play at that point yet. So just kind of thinking about some of those things.
Yeah. The other thing, quick, Steve, the other thing that we need to pay attention to, I don't know if we'll see it or not, but are these teams playing in week 16, 17 especially? Are they playing against each other, being on the same bye week? Like we'll probably get there, and maybe we'll see one, maybe we won't, but that's certainly something that we want to be looking at when we're building out our roster construction game stacks for weeks 16 and 17 especially. But go ahead, Steve. Sorry to cut you off there.
Well, and just to reiterate that the big one last year, everyone wanted Ravens Texans, and they both had the week 14 bye, and made it much more difficult. But the other thing, and it's just something I'm going to look into more this year, is when you are going 2 quarterbacks, is it perhaps better to do with one of the teams having an early bye? Because if you went 2 quarterbacks last year and you said Lamar and Daniel Jones, well, Daniel Jones is benched by that point, or just somebody else is injured, injuries are more likely to occur later in the year. So just something to consider. I haven't done any data on it, looked into it, but I just thought about it last year. I know I had some 2 quarterback Lamar teams that failed because I was taking a 0 that week, whether it was somebody who was injured or somebody who was benched. And just something to keep in mind. You run a little bit more risk than if it's two quarterbacks and the buys are early. They're more likely, you're less likely to face an injury early.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to take those bench risk quarterbacks. Even like a guy like Darnold is possible. So maybe I don't know what his bye week is, but let's say it's week 14. That's a prime example this season that you might want to kind of watch out for. But yeah, Lamar and Josh Allen both in week 7, which should be interesting for the eliminator at some point, I would imagine. But we'll get to bye week 8 here, so we're there. Go ahead, Billy. You want to lead this off?
I mean, this is the biggest bye week of the entire year. We 6 teams, but there's only one of these that's this big. But it does. I mean, that's enough players. I mean, this will have an impact on the eliminator when you see this chunk of the player pool just completely not playing. So I think that's probably the biggest thing to note.
Yeah, so far we haven't seen anyone that's playing each other, at least on week 17. I'm not familiar enough with week 16 yet that I could just call that out off the top of my head. But so this is this the only that we know of by Mageddon? I guess we'll scroll through.
Yeah, there's a couple other that have 4, but this is the only one that has 6. I mean, it is a fair, we'll pause on the eliminator real quick. It's a good chunk of the first round. So Jags, that Brian Thomas Jr., Raiders will Genty, and then honorable mention Bowers. Lions, that's guarding. That's got like two guys already. Cardinals, not so much. Rams got Puka in there, so like it's just like a half of the first round is already gone.
Yeah, and high end pieces though, like the Rams have some high end pieces, including Kyron, like top 3 round guys, right? Puka, Kyron, Devontae, all top 3 round picks. Same thing with the, not so much, but two 3-turn guys, 2 potential 2nd-round picks, right? With the Cardinals, obviously we know the Lions. Yeah, it's and even the Jags, like you said, with Travis Hunter flying up the board a little bit. He's a 3rd-round pick now, I believe. So definitely something worth thinking about when you're building your eliminator teams. Yeah. And last year, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was 6 twice last year, correct?
There was.
Yeah. Which is wild. But so far, I don't think we've seen anybody that plays each other. I don't know if that continues. Chiefs, Titans, Cowboys, Bengals should be all right. And the last, is it bye week 12? I'm assuming is our last bye week.
And then 14.
There's none on 13 because that's Thanksgiving week.
Yeah, I think we're in the clear.
We escaped it. Okay, good. So no week 17 matchups in for bye weeks. That's good. That is good. Let's go to week 15 then. Let's kick off week 15. It's obviously the first week that you need to advance out of. Obviously, 1 of 13 in Best Ball Mania advances. So super important. I mean, what's your take? Maybe Billy first. What's your take on focusing on week 15 or 16 first and foremost ahead of week 17? What would be your take on that? Is that a viable strategy? Can it work, do you think?
I mean, it makes sense if you're improving something more drastically than the rest of the field is, and it also making the finals is just a huge like boost to how you feel. But like I think from like maximizing your value, the finals is the most important. I think where you got to kind of more think of these as like things that are to kind of maybe cross off or to dock someone a little bit if it's not a great situation. I think the first thing in week 15 that stands out to me is Miami at Pittsburgh. We don't typically love Tua in the winter and the cold. Primetime game could be great, but could also be a disaster. I could see that going that way. So that was the one that like stood out to me.
So the example I would kind of use, like we know we like the 49ers, right? We know we like the 49ers Bears. That's just an example. Maybe it's a top one, maybe it's not, just an example. So we like the 49ers Bears. We focus on the 49ers side. We get a bring back for the Bears, and then we also get a high, value, like a Jonathan Taylor, like a high value leverage spot for the Colts. As well, like that kind of becomes our focus. That was kind of more my question as far as could it work? Obviously it could, but let's say it's I don't know, for the Bears, let's say it's Luther Burden, which actually would be a really good bring back in that game. But that was kind of my question. Steve, what are your thoughts on that too? Like, is that something that you think you'd like to do, or is that something you do or leverage?
So it's definitely something I started to explore more last year, just because I'm a big believer. I kind of treat it the regular season, then week 15, week 16. These are, kind of qualifiers for us, to get to the big dance. And so, but we have to get through them. And the first one's we the most control of, and then week 15, 16. We kind of don't know who's going to be injured and all that kind of stuff. But I do think it's smart to again look for teams that have a good run throughout, or like get a piece in some of these earlier games. And I don't think it's a bad thing to say, like, if you draft Jonathan Taylor in the 2nd round, and then you're like take Kittle and you're like, oh wow, I can really open up this 49ers Bears stack, and then just start hitting that and being like, hey, I don't need more Colts pieces. This offense could be a one-man show. it helps, but it helps me here, and gets my team through to the next round, et cetera. So I do think, and especially when we start looking at, like I mentioned earlier, the guy who got sniped with Lamb Amon-Ra, like he had the best 2 receivers you wanted week 17, but then he started looking to build other stacks and other pieces, and like sometimes you get sniped, and this can be a way to, okay, I maybe won't have the perfect week 17 correlation, but I have a much better chance now to get this team through because I'm going to build it for week 15, week 16. And I still have maybe a skinny stack for week 17, something like that. So just something to consider. We all get sniped in drafts. We all need to, change our plan as we're going through the draft. So it's one of those things, like, your team's not dead. So just find ways to maximize its upside, find ways to get there. And like what Underdogs did for, some of their bigger tournaments, especially these more big lotto tournaments, like, you got your max entry back for making the final. So anyone who got one finals team back last year was pretty happy, even if you finished 552nd or whatever the last finals place team was. So I do think there is more value in just getting to the finals. We don't know what happens that week. We see injuries pop up at the last minute. We see, quarterbacks that we thought were going to be great be terrible, and quarterbacks rise out of nowhere. I mean, T. Higgins was injured a lot of the year, but he ended up being the hero, and Marvin Mims, who did nothing for Denver all year, ended up being the bring back he wanted. It wasn't Sutton and Chase as the, that Bengals Broncos stack. So that's what I'd say is, it's a good way to find other pivots and maybe open yourself up to some more unique roster builds by applying more week 15, week 16, and maybe just having a skinny stack or a small stack for week 17.
Yeah, using that exact example, that could be another good way to kind of leverage away from that. So let's look at the 49ers Colts. I wanted to pull this one back up. Like we kind of were talking about earlier and we're alluding to, there's a lot of back end 1-2 turn chalk, picks back there. So a way that you could kind of maybe leverage that a little bit and get yours. And I've already talked myself into it. I'm going to do this where I think it makes a lot of sense. Looking again at that 49ers Bears game, like there's a pretty large gap between Christian McCaffrey and then the rest of that game stack. So let's say you're on the 1-2 turn, even in the 11 spot, 10 spot, whatever, you take Christian McCaffrey, bring it back with Jonathan Taylor. You have that high end week 16 matchup in a dome, right? And then you bring it back, you get whatever other pieces from the 49ers, and then you get your Bears. You just kind of take it from there. So that could be a way of somewhat leveraging away from these chalky 1-2 turn kind of stacks that are built in. Again, like the Lad in Nico, which is going to be just like Billy was saying earlier, that we're going to see so much of that, or with the Rams, Puka London, right? Like, we're going to see countless screenshots on the Twitter machine of those stacks saying, oh, this is the winner. This is the winner. And it's like, probably not. So that was kind of something that I just kind of put together in my head while we're looking at it.
I love that because with that game, outside of Christian McCaffrey, the running backs are not super exciting. Even Christian McCaffrey, I am somewhat concerned. Like, he's shown injury. He's been hurt, and if that happens again, what are you going to do? So bringing in a running back, still a correlated running back from a different game into that environment is a great way to build that, and because you have a plethora of pass catchers you could attack with.
Yeah, and I mean, it depends on how you build, but we did see that last year that was a quality start going RB. You might be taking a lot of risk. You might have to catch up from there at wide receiver, which you can do. Shouldn't be the end of the world, but again, you're kind of locking down. And those, I think we can agree, in those two offenses, the Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor are the pieces that you would prefer. They are the number one pieces in those offenses, and it's not particularly close. So yeah, I'm certain I will be doing that already to start RB. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of way of looking at it. And then conversely, you're talking about the Steelers and Dolphins week 15, but looking at their week 16 matchup, that's a pretty nice looking matchup at home, in Miami against obviously a rough defense. So maybe that's a type of a game where you might just want to try to push through like a Tyreek or a Waddle, right? Push them through week 15, not need them. And then you land in week 16 where it's tougher to advance one of 16 instead of one of 13, like it is in week 15. Maybe that's something that's, I don't know, just worth thinking about, is those types of game environments that show up the next week that might be the guy you need.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's just an interesting way to look at it. Like you said, these week 17 stacks are going to be heavily owned, and you just continuing with the theme, but there's going to be a lot of like Jonathan Taylor, Brian Thomas. If you're doing Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, you're making it more unique. You're making your Taylor shares more unique.
Especially with how much everybody hates taking running backs early these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just another way to kind of look at it and leverage against the field. That's going to be like building in this chalk. It's going to be chalky, and I'll have my shares of it too. Everybody you want to have some shares of that chalky matchup. Look at was it 2 years ago where it was the Dallas Detroit?
Mm-hmm.
It was super chalk. Everybody knew it, but it's what you had to have. So. Yeah. You want some exposure to the chalk. Like when you're building 150 DFS lineups, you're going to have some. When I build my golf lineups, I have Scotty Scheffler in my model. Like I'm not going to take him out because, it's chalk. Like if he's the guy you need, he's the guy you need. And then you've got to get unique in other ways. But either way, like I was kind of getting at, like you're going to have some exposure to the chalk because it might just be what you have to have. And that's that. There's no other way around it. But again, if you can leverage away from it, like in this example with Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey, I think you can potentially, land in a good spot come week 17. But yeah. I think that's pretty much all we got. Do you guys have anything?
Yeah, I mean, no, I think we kind of summed it up, and I haven't gone through all, but I definitely looking at these teams. Again, to me, the biggest full playoff thing is I want to see potentially good weather or dome and easy schedules in all three games. If you can get that, I think there is some value there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like we could definitely do this potentially in a week and have a little more complete story to tell as far as like just looking at this. I know Falcons are at home, then they play the Bucs in week 15. I'd imagine maybe they play the Saints or something. Probably not, but either way in week 16. So right off the hop, the Atlanta Falcons could be a team that you really want to focus on. Yeah, Cardinals. There you go. Atlanta Falcons, top of my list already, realistically, right? So, yeah, I think again we can come back to this in a week or tomorrow even, and have a better picture of the teams that we want to focus on. But I just wanted to get on here while it was fresh, and see if we can come up with any ideas. So, yeah. Any final thoughts, boys?
No, I'll go first. Like Billy said, we now have more actual data, and we now need to start making decisions of how we want to utilize it. Who should rise? Who should fall? And I do think keep in mind, like while we want some guys to rise, it's not worth it to take them like 2 rounds ahead or anything crazy. Like it's got to still make sense. You don't want to overdraft guys. It's not going to work out for you. You're going to lose any edge you're getting by that week 17 correlation by doing that.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Like you don't need to. You can only all you got to do is identify 3 players that go in the same range where only 2 players can go, and just move one of them up. You don't need to move 5 people up. You don't need to move them up 7 rounds. Just 1 round. Go get the guy that makes that trio undoable. Like one that I'm going to try to do early is this Lions Vikings, kind of the middle rounds. Jameson Williams, Jordan Addison, Sam Laporta, David Montgomery, Aaron Jones, TJ Hawkinson are all like within like 3 rounds of each other. So I'm going to try to set some version of that up. So that's one thing I'm like excited to do for this next couple of weeks is have those like fun little like challenges when I'm drafting.
Yeah, just trying to predict closing line value essentially. Like that's a great point of like, you know, 2 of these wide receivers can go up, 1 can't. You know what I mean? And identifying who they are and then trying to get ahead of ADPs on that. So maybe again, we know that they're going to shift. A lot of these players are going to shift up or down at least 6 to 8 picks ADP wise.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. So just being able to identify who those guys are, who's going to shift up. I think Jameson Williams is a prime example. He is probably going to shift up the board at least a half a round, let's call it. Maybe he wraps around the corner and becomes a whatever it is, 5th round pick instead of a 6th round pick, something like that. So yeah, and being able to identify the closing line value, because you can take a guy, you know, there's data that I'm sure Billy has or knows about, like 12 picks. That's pretty hard, a hard line that you don't particularly want to cross, especially within the first 10 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Where, you know, so if it's 11 picks, feel free. If it's 14 picks, maybe think about it a little bit more. Depends. And again, closing line value will play a role in this stuff, but we'll wrap it up. I appreciate you guys coming on. That was good. I just wanted to get in while it was fresh, and it was pretty fresh for me. I didn't get too much of a chance to look at the schedule before we got in here. So I appreciate you guys coming on. I'm sure we all want to go draft and study these schedules a little bit. So we'll get out of here. We'll let the chat go draft. I appreciate the chat. Hit the like button if you don't mind. If you like the content, hit the subscribe button. We're not drafting tonight, but this is a very important exercise, in my opinion, to do. And this will be a talking point throughout the summer, obviously, because it's a huge thing when we're talking about best ball. But hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Both Billy and Steve's Twitter are in the description. Go follow both of these gentlemen. Billy, any final words for the team? I know you stream with Pat once a week, but anything else you got going on?
Yeah, you said it. I'm with over on like the Dog Pound once a week, doing mostly ADP stuff, bringing charts to the, as well, kind of like what we went through today. I kind of just do whatever I feel like is fun. So if you have something for me as you want to investigate, just slide into my DMs and I'll see what I can do.
Nice. Steve, what do you got going on? I was just on the FanSpeak network before coming on here. Dusted BBG. No, I'm kidding. BBG was killing me. I hung in there and was able to come back due to a daily double. But so go follow FanSpeak. But Steve, anything you got going on? I know you got a bunch going on over there. So give the people a little taste.
Yeah, we just had the first round of Jeopardy, but we're going to keep doing that and probably more other like fun shows, as well as our drafts and all that. And then, we just launched our Best Ball subscription on Substack. You can find that FanSpeak Best Ball on Substack. And we're going to be in Twitter, Substack, our site, FanSpeak, on YouTube, just covering it all year, running a lot of drafts and having fun.
Nice. Definitely go subscribe over there. Follow both of these guys on the Twitter machine. And like we always say on Off the Schneid, if you're afraid to be wrong, you'll never be right. Hopefully we put some things together tonight and we can be right this season. But we'll be out of here. I'll be back on Friday night for a stream. We'll probably be ripping a BBM most likely. It's safe to draft BBM again. So I'm sure the streets will be buzzing after the schedule release tonight. But we'll see you guys next time. Come check us out on Friday. Peace.